The Crimson Warning. The transport shuttle bucked through Krivshar's ash-thick atmosphere, and Marcus Thane gripped his seat restraints, watching the moon's volcanic surface surge closer through the viewport. 6 months of preparation, countless briefings, diplomatic protocols drilled into his mind. None of it had quite prepared him for the reality of descending into what Earth's military called the Burning Lands. Landing in 2 minutes, Envoy Thane, the pilot's voice crackled through the intercom. Try not to die down there. The Soltari aren't known for their hospitality. Marcus allowed himself a thin smile. At 32, he'd negotiated with warlords, mercenary kings, and corporate despots. How different could warriors made of living fire really be? The landing platform materialized through the smoke, a sprawling structure of heat-resistant alloys and cooling systems that hummed with constant vigilance. As the shuttle touched down with a hiss of hydraulics, Marcus caught his first glimpse of them. Soltari warriors lined the platform in formation, their bodies covered in fitted armor that left strategic gaps, not for vulnerability, but for heat dissipation. Even from inside the climate-controlled shuttle, Marcus could see the shimmer of thermal distortion around them, the air itself bending away from their presence. Then she stepped forward. Captain Rhea Solwind moved with a predator's grace, her amber skin marked with patterns that glowed like embers beneath a thin veil of ash. Her eyes burned with an inner light, literally, Marcus realized with fascination, irises that flickered between gold and crimson. She wore minimal armor, more confident in her body's natural defense than any metal plating could provide. Her dark hair was bound back in intricate braids woven with heat-resistant wire. Marcus descended the ramp, the air immediately feeling like a physical weight against his skin. His environmental suit's cooling system kicked into overdrive. Envoy Marcus Thane of Earth, Rhea's voice carried across the platform, accented but clear. I am Captain Rhea Solwind. I will escort you to the negotiation chambers. He approached with his hand extended, a human gesture of greeting he'd used 1,000 times. Rhea's expression shifted instantly to something between rage and panic. The glow beneath her skin flared brighter, veins of light tracing up her arms like liquid fire seeking escape. The warriors behind her tensed, hands moving toward weapons. Stop! Her command cracked like a whip. Do not come closer, human. Marcus froze, hands still outstretched, confusion evident on his face. Rhea's breathing was controlled but heavy, each exhale carrying a visible wave of heat. She took a deliberate step back, and Marcus noticed the metal plating beneath her boots had begun to glow red. Let me be absolutely clear, she said, her voice lower now, dangerous. Touch me and burn, human. My people do not make contact. We cannot. Do you understand? Marcus slowly lowered his hand, but his eyes never left hers. Where others might have seen only threat in her warning, he caught something else, a flash of something haunted in those burning eyes. Not anger. Loneliness. I understand, he said quietly. Forgive my ignorance, Captain. I meant no disrespect. Rhea's glow dimmed slightly, surprise flickering across her features. She had expected fear or offense, not understanding. Come, she said curtly, turning with military precision. The council awaits. Stay 3 paces behind me at all times. And envoy. She glanced back over her shoulder. Whatever made Earth send a diplomat who leads with kindness, they made a terrible mistake. Kindness is a luxury my people abandoned long ago. But as she walked toward the fortress carved into the volcanic rock, Rhea found herself unsettled. Because when Marcus Thane had looked at her warning not with fear but with something softer, perhaps even sympathy, a part of her she'd thought long dead had stirred. And that terrified her far more than any weapon ever could. Flames beneath the surface. The negotiation chamber was a monument to Soltari engineering, walls of obsidian glass reinforced with thermal dampeners, air circulation systems that roared like distant storms, and a table of polished stone that could withstand temperatures hot enough to liquefy steel. Marcus sat across from 3 Soltari council members, but his attention kept drifting to Rhea, who stood at attention near the entrance, her role as military liaison keeping her present but silent. The talks had dragged through 2 days of territorial disputes and resource allocations. Progress was glacial, but Marcus had expected that. What he hadn't expected was the sabotage. The explosion in the eastern quadrant came without warning, a deep, rumbling boom that shook dust from the ancient stone ceiling. Alarms shrieked through the fortress, and Rhea's training took over instantly. "Extremists," she barked, already moving toward the door. "The mining faction, they've opposed this treaty from the beginning." She glanced at Marcus with something between irritation and concern. "You need to come with me. Now." They ran through corridors carved from volcanic rock, emergency lighting casting everything in crimson shadows. Marcus's environmental suit struggled with the fluctuating temperatures as they descended into the lower levels. Behind them, he could hear the council members being evacuated by other guards. "Where are we going?" Marcus called out, his lungs burning despite the suit's filtration system. "The old tunnels," Rhea answered without slowing. "If they've infiltrated this deep, they'll be using the abandoned mining network to move through the fortress. We need to cut them off before they reach the power core." The tunnel entrance yawned before them like a throat of darkness. Rhea's body began to glow brighter, her natural luminescence serving as a torch. Marcus activated his suit's headlamp, and together they plunged into the depths. The abandoned passages were a maze of branching paths and collapsed sections. Marcus found himself watching Rhea more than the terrain, the way her light painted the walls in shifting patterns, how her movements remained fluid and certain even in this hostile environment. She was beautiful in a way that defied human aesthetics, something primal and fierce that called to something equally primal in him. "There," Rhea hissed, raising a fist to halt their advance. Ahead, shadows moved in the darkness. Voices echoed off stone, harsh Soltari dialect that Marcus's translator struggled to parse. Rhea's glow dimmed as she controlled her heat signature, becoming nearly invisible in the dark. Then the world exploded. The blast came from a side tunnel Marcus hadn't even noticed. The concussive force threw him sideways into the wall, his helmet cracking against stone. Through blurred vision, he saw Rhea engaging 3 attackers, her movements a dance of controlled violence. But a 4th extremist had circled behind her, weapon raised. Marcus didn't think. He launched himself forward, tackling the attacker. They went down in a tangle of limbs, and Marcus felt the searing heat of Soltari's skin even through his suit. The extremist's weapon clattered away, and Marcus rolled clear just as Rhea's fist connected with the attacker's jaw, sending him crumpling to the ground. The other extremists fled into the darkness, recognizing they were outmatched. Silence fell, broken only by Marcus's ragged breathing and the hum of cooling systems straining to compensate. He tried to stand and immediately collapsed, his left leg refusing to support his weight. Blood seeped through a tear in his suit where shrapnel had found flesh. "You're injured." Rhea's voice was different now, stripped of its military edge, almost gentle. "I've had worse," Marcus lied, wincing as he tried to shift his weight. Rhea knelt beside him, and Marcus could feel waves of heat radiating from her body. She stared at his wound, her jaw clenched with an internal struggle he couldn't fully understand. "I need to treat this," she said quietly. "But Your heat," Marcus said, understanding flooding through him. "You're afraid you'll hurt me." Rhea's luminescent eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw her without the warrior's mask. Vulnerable. Afraid. "I have never touched anyone without armor between us. Not since I was a child, before my core fully developed." Marcus made a decision that defied every survival instinct. He reached out and took her hand. Rhea gasped, her whole body going rigid. Heat surged through the contact point, not burning, exactly, but intense, like plunging a hand into bathwater just on the edge of too hot. Marcus held on, his fingers wrapping around hers. "I trust you," he said simply. Rhea's hand trembled in his. The glow beneath her skin pulsed erratically, and he could see the concentration on her face as she fought for control. Slowly, impossibly, the heat began to stabilize. Still warm, but no longer dangerous. With shaking fingers, she removed the medical kit from his suit's emergency pocket. As she cleaned and sealed his wound, Marcus watched emotions flicker across her face. Wonder, fear, longing, confusion. "Why did you shield me back there?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You could have been killed." "Same reason you're helping me now," Marcus answered. "Because some things matter more than fear." Rhea finished dressing his wound in silence, but she didn't let go of his hand. They sat in that dark tunnel for several minutes, neither speaking, both trying to comprehend what had just happened between them. Finally, Rhea pulled away, the loss of contact like a physical ache. "We should return," she said, her military bearing sliding back into place like armor. But her voice carried something new now, a softness that hadn't been there before. "The Council will need to know about the attack." As she helped Marcus to his feet, their eyes met again, and an unspoken question hung between them. What have we just begun? The space between fire and flesh. Marcus spent the next 3 days in the embassy medical wing, his injury healing but his mind consumed by something far more urgent. He'd requisitioned every scientific database Earth had on Soltari physiology, poring over thermal readings, biological studies, and centuries-old first contact reports. His room had become a chaos of holographic displays and scattered notes. "You look terrible," Dr. Sarah Chen observed as she changed his bandaging. The Earth physician had accompanied the diplomatic mission, though she'd seen little action until now. "When was the last time you slept?" "There has to be something," Marcus muttered, barely hearing her. "Some precedent, some explanation for why I didn't burn." Sarah followed his gaze to the data streams. "You're researching Captain Solwyn's condition." "Her people's condition," Marcus corrected, though they both knew that was only partially true. "They live entire lives without physical contact, Sarah. No touch, no embrace, nothing. Can you imagine?" "I can imagine it's not your job to solve that problem," Sarah said pointedly. "Your job is to secure a treaty." Marcus finally looked at her, exhaustion evident in his eyes. What if they're connected? What if the key to lasting peace is understanding them, truly understanding them, instead of just negotiating borders and trade routes? Sarah's expression softened. "You care about her." It wasn't a question, and Marcus didn't pretend otherwise. "I've never met anyone so strong and so isolated at the same time. She's built her entire identity around being untouchable, and it's killing something inside her." That evening, Marcus attended a formal diplomatic dinner despite his physician's protests. The Soltari Council had arranged it as a show of renewed commitment to the peace process after the extremist attack. The hall was vast and impressive, with cooling systems that allowed humans and Soltari to occupy the same space without discomfort, though carefully separated by several meters of distance at all times. Rhea stood with other military officers, her formal armor polished to a mirror finish. She'd been avoiding his gaze all evening, but Marcus could feel the tension between them like a magnetic field. Then chaos erupted. An assassin dropped from the ventilation system, a Soltari extremist in heat-dampening armor, moving with deadly purpose. The target was clear: Marcus, the symbol of human Soltari cooperation. The assassin's blade, superheated to cut through any material, swept toward Marcus's throat. Rhea moved faster than thought. She crossed the space between them in a blur, pulling Marcus behind her. But in her haste, in the pure instinct to protect him, she'd forgotten the most fundamental rule of her existence. They collided, his chest against her back, his arms instinctively wrapping around her waist as they both stumbled. Full contact. No armor between them. Rhea's scream was primal, terrified. Her core ignited with the force of her panic, light blazing from every vein in her body. The heat should have killed Marcus instantly, should have reduced him to ash in seconds. Instead, something impossible happened. The heat flowed through Marcus like water finding its level. His body absorbed it, channeled it, and somehow, impossibly, sent it back to Rhea in a stable loop. Her wild, dangerous energy found equilibrium in his touch. The assassin, blinded by Rhea's sudden flare of light, stumbled directly into 2 other guards who subdued him immediately. But Marcus and Rhea barely noticed. They stood frozen, locked together, both terrified to move and break whatever miracle was occurring between them. "You're not burning," Rhea whispered, her voice shaking. "Why aren't you burning?" Marcus's arms remained around her, and he could feel her heart racing, or whatever served as a heart in Soltari physiology. "I don't know. But I'm not afraid." Slowly, Rhea turned in his embrace until they faced each other. Her eyes were wide with wonder and fear in equal measure. This close, Marcus could see the intricate patterns of light beneath her skin, like living constellations mapping unknown territory. "This isn't possible," she said, but her hands had moved to rest against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. The science, everything we know. Everything you know is wrong, Marcus said softly. Or incomplete. Rhea, you're touching me. Really touching me. A sound escaped her throat, half laugh, half sob. Around them, the dinner hall had erupted into chaos as guards secured the area and council members demanded explanations. But in their bubble of impossible contact, the world seemed distant and unimportant. I need to understand this, Rhea said, her scientific mind warring with emotions she'd never been allowed to feel. If this is real, if it's repeatable, if other humans could. I know, Marcus said, understanding the magnitude of what they'd discovered. This changes everything. Security forces finally reached them, and reluctantly, they separated. But as Rhea was pulled away for debriefing, she looked back at Marcus with an expression he'd never seen on her face before. Hope. That night, they met in secret on one of the fortress's cooling platforms, a space designed to give Soltari respite from their own heat. The stars of Krevshar's system glittered overhead, and the volcanic moon's surface glowed with rivers of magma in the distance. I wasn't supposed to come, Rhea said, though she made no move to leave. She'd shed her formal armor for simple heat-dispersing clothing. This is inappropriate. Dangerous. Dangerous how? Marcus asked, keeping a careful distance despite every instinct screaming at him to close it. Because of your heat, or because of how you feel? Rhea's glow flickered. He was learning to read her emotions through those subtle changes in luminescence. Both. Neither. I don't know anymore. She turned to face him fully. Do you understand what you've done? For 30 years, I've lived knowing I could never have what others take for granted. And in one moment, you've shown me it might be possible. That's cruel, Marcus. Because what if it only works with you? What if it's just some strange compatibility between your biology and mine, unrepeatable, unexplainable? Marcus stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her. Then we find out. We test it, study it, understand it. And if it only works between us? He paused, gathering courage. Would that really be so terrible? Rhea's breath caught. You're supposed to return to Earth when the treaty is signed. You have a life there. And I have duties here that will last decades. Then we find a way, Marcus said. Rhea, I've spent my career building bridges between worlds. Let me build this one. She reached out hesitantly, her hand stopping just short of his face. If I hurt you. You won't. Rhea's fingers touched his cheek, and they both sighed with relief and wonder as the contact remained gentle, warm but safe. Her thumb traced the line of his jaw, exploring this forbidden sensation with the reverence of something sacred. I don't know how to do this, she admitted, vulnerability cracking through her warrior's composure. I don't know how to want someone, how to be close. Neither do I, Marcus confessed, his hand rising to cover hers. Not like this. But maybe we can figure it out together. Above them, a meteor streaked across the alien sky, and in that moment, two people from worlds apart stood on the edge of something that terrified and exhilarated them both. Something that looked impossibly like hope. Between war and want. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of scientific analysis and escalating tension. Dr. Chen worked with Soltari researchers, running tests on Marcus's blood samples, thermal tolerance levels, and bioelectric readings. The preliminary results were staggering. Something in human neural chemistry appeared to create a feedback loop with Soltari plasma cores, stabilizing the volatile energy that made physical contact so dangerous. But the extremist faction wasn't waiting for scientific breakthroughs. The attack came at dawn, when Krevshar's sun broke over the volcanic ridges and the fortress was at its most vulnerable during shift changes. Marcus was reviewing treaty documents in his quarters when the first explosion shook the building's foundation. His emergency comm crackled to life with Rhea's voice. Marcus, they're hitting the summit. Full assault, at least 40 extremists, maybe more. Get to the central bunker now. Where are you? Marcus demanded, already moving toward the door. A pause filled with weapons fire. East Wing. We're trying to hold them back from the main chambers where the council, her transmission cut to static. Every diplomatic instinct told Marcus to follow protocol, to seek shelter and let the warriors handle it. But something deeper, something he'd felt since the moment Rhea's hand first touched his, drove him in the opposite direction. He ran toward the sound of battle. The fortress had become a war zone. Smoke choked the corridors, emergency lighting painted everything in hellish red, and the heat was overwhelming even through his suit systems. Marcus found Rhea in a collapsed section of the East Wing, fighting alongside a handful of guards against a force 3 times their size. She moved like living flame given purpose, every strike precise, every movement economy of deadly grace. But the extremists had come prepared with heat-dampening weapons that disrupted Soltari abilities. Marcus watched as one of Rhea's guards took a direct hit and collapsed, their natural luminescence flickering like a dying star. Rhea saw Marcus and her eyes flashed with anger and fear. "I told you to reach the bunker. And miss this." Marcus grabbed a fallen weapon, a thermal lance designed for Soltari hands but functional enough for desperate humans. "Besides, you look like you could use the help." An extremist lunged between them, forcing Rhea to pivot. She dispatched him efficiently but found herself pinned against a wall by 2 more attackers. Their dampening fields created a dead zone around her, suppressing her natural heat and leaving her vulnerable. Marcus didn't hesitate. He charged forward, his improvised weapon crackling to life. He wasn't a soldier, his strikes were clumsy compared to Rhea's fluid combat, but desperation and determination made up for technique. He managed to disable one attacker's dampening device, giving Rhea the opening she needed. She exploded back into action, her core reigniting with renewed fury. Together, they fought their way through the corridor, their coordination instinctive and seamless. Marcus anticipated her movements. She covered his vulnerabilities. It was as if they'd trained together for years rather than days. They reached the main summit chamber to find it under siege. Council members from both species were trapped inside, protected by reinforced doors that were beginning to buckle under sustained assault. The extremists had brought heavy equipment, industrial mining lasers capable of cutting through anything given enough time. "They're going to breach within minutes," Rhea said, her tactical assessment grim. "And we don't have enough forces to hold them." Marcus's mind raced through diplomatic solutions, strategic options, anything that might turn the tide. Then his eyes fell on Rhea, on the way her body glowed with barely contained energy, and a desperate idea took shape. "Your heat," he said urgently. "When we touch, it stabilizes, creates that feedback loop. What if we could amplify it? Use it as a weapon?" Rhea's eyes widened with understanding and horror. The energy output could be massive. "But Marcus, I've never pushed my core to its limits while in contact with anyone. If something goes wrong..." "Then we fail together," Marcus said, extending his hand. "Trust me. Like I trusted you in those tunnels." For a heartbeat, Rhea hesitated. Then her fingers laced through his, and the world ignited. Power surged between them, not the gentle warmth of their previous contacts, but a raging torrent of plasma energy seeking release. Marcus felt it pour into him, through him, his nervous system becoming a conduit for forces that should have destroyed any human instantly. Pain and euphoria merged into something transcendent. Rhea's eyes blazed like twin suns. "I can't control it." "You don't have to," Marcus gritted out, feeling his own body beginning to glow with reflected energy. "We control it together. On my count, 3, 2, 1. They released the built-up energy in a directed pulse that exploded outward like a solar flare. The wave of superheated plasma rolled through the corridor, overwhelming the extremists' dampening fields, fusing their weapons into useless slag, and sending them fleeing in disarray. The assault broke in seconds. Then Marcus and Rhea collapsed together, the energy expenditure leaving them both trembling and exhausted. They lay on the scorched floor, hands still clasped, breathing hard. "That was insane," Rhea gasped, but she was smiling, actually smiling, something Marcus had never seen before. "Diplomatically speaking," Marcus managed, "I believe the technical term is effective." Rhea's laugh was breathless and beautiful. Then her expression shifted to something more vulnerable. "You could have died. That much energy through a human body." "But I didn't," Marcus interrupted, squeezing her hand. Because we did it together. Security forces finally arrived, securing the area and tending to the wounded. As medics checked them both, Council Leader Vexnor approached, an elder Soltari whose long years showed in the dimmed glow of his weathered skin. What we witnessed today, the elder said slowly, should not be possible. Yet here you both stand. His ancient eyes moved between them. Perhaps the universe has more surprises than our cautious hearts allow. That evening, after hours of debriefing and medical evaluation, Marcus found Rhea on the same cooling platform where they'd met nights before. She stood at the railing, looking out over the volcanic landscape, her silhouette backlit by flowing magma in the distance. "I've been thinking," she said without turning, sensing his presence, "about what happens when this treaty is signed. When your mission here ends." Marcus joined her at the railing, maintaining the careful distance that had become habit. "I've been thinking about that too. I spoke with Council Leader Vexnor," Rhea continued. "The data from today's incident is being analyzed by every scientist on both our worlds. If what happened between us is repeatable, if other humans could stabilize Soltari cores through contact." She finally looked at him. "My people could be freed from generations of isolation." "That's wonderful," Marcus said, though his heart clenched at the underlying implication. "You'd be able to touch others. Not just me." Rhea stepped closer, closing the distance between them until only inches separated their bodies. "Do you know what terrifies me most? Not that it might work with others. That it might not." Her hand rose to rest against his chest, feeling his heartbeat. "What if you return to Earth and I discover that this only works with you? That I've had one taste of something I can never have again?" Marcus covered her hand with his. "What if I don't return? What if I request an extended assignment, become a permanent liaison between our worlds? You'd give up your life on Earth? For research? For the treaty?" "For you," Marcus said simply. "Rhea, I've spent my career bringing people together across impossible divides. But I've never felt this kind of connection. Like I was incomplete until I found the other half of something I didn't know was broken." Rhea's eyes glistened. Could Soltari cry? Marcus realized he didn't know. "I was taught that warriors don't need softness. That touch was weakness, a vulnerability we evolved beyond. But being with you feels like the opposite of weak. It feels like the strongest thing I've ever done." "Then let's be strong together," Marcus said, pulling her closer. Their embrace was careful at first, testing the boundaries of this impossible gift. But as Rhea's head rested against his shoulder and his arms wrapped around her, the careful became confident. Her heat enveloped him like summer sunlight, intense but safe, and he felt her body relax against his in a way he suspected it never had before. "I don't know what tomorrow brings," Rhea whispered against his neck. "If the treaty holds, if the research succeeds, if we can build something real between our peoples." "Then let's start with tonight," Marcus replied, his hand stroking gently along her back, marveling at the warmth beneath his fingers. "And tomorrow, we'll figure out together." Above them, Krivshar's stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the small miracle occurring beneath them. Two souls from different worlds, finding in each other something neither had known they needed.